The first scream didn't come from a man on the ground. It came from a little girl standing beside the playground, clutching a red balloon as it drifted nervously in the afternoon breeze. Parents froze. Joggers slowed to a stop. Dozens of heads turned toward the center of Riverside Park, where flashing patrol lights reflected against a peaceful pond that had been calm only moments before. Officer Tyler Grayson stood rigid, his breathing quick, one hand firmly gripping his department-issued taser, while the other motioned for everyone to stay back. His voice carried across the open lawn with the confidence of someone convinced he was protecting the public. "Nobody move. Stay where you are." Around him, smartphones rose into the air almost in unison. Every second was being recorded from different angles, though no one realized they were capturing a moment that would soon dominate every national news network in America. Less than 15 feet away, Andre Kingston slowly sat upright on the grass, his face calm despite the confusion surrounding him. He brushed a few blades of grass from the sleeve of his charcoal jacket before looking directly at the officer. There was no anger in his expression, no shouting, no threats, just a quiet disappointment that somehow carried more weight than any raised voice could have. Nearby, two teenagers whispered to each other. What did that guy even do? Neither of them had an answer. Neither did the elderly couple sitting on the nearby bench, who had watched the entire encounter unfold in stunned silence. The only thing anyone seemed certain about was that something felt terribly wrong. Tyler's jaw remained tight. In his mind, every decision had happened exactly the way his training demanded. A suspicious man, expensive clothing, strange electronic equipment, refusing to leave the area quickly enough. Pieces that, to him, had formed a complete picture. But pictures built on assumptions rarely survive contact with the truth. A park maintenance worker stepped closer, removing his baseball cap as he spoke carefully. "Officer, I think you've got the wrong guy." Tyler barely glanced at him. "Sir, step back." The worker obeyed, but not, before shaking his head with quiet disbelief. The crowd continued to grow. Children were quietly led away by nervous parents. Cyclists stopped beside the walking trail. A drone hovering nearby, flown earlier for recreational photography, continued recording everything from above without anyone noticing. Andre finally broke the silence. His voice remained steady, measured, almost gentle. "Officer, may I ask what law you believe I've broken?" Tyler answered without hesitation. "You'll have plenty of time to explain yourself downtown." Andre looked around the park, meeting the anxious eyes of strangers who had never seen him before, yet somehow sensed they were witnessing more than an ordinary police stop. He inhaled slowly before speaking one sentence that would later be replayed millions of times across television broadcasts, podcasts, and courtrooms alike. "You're making a decision that will change both of our lives." Tyler dismissed the remark with a brief scoff, unaware that 5 hours earlier, this very park had been chosen for a reason far different from the one unfolding before him. 5 hours earlier, Riverside Park looked nothing like the place that would soon flood television screens across the country. The morning sun rested gently above the oak trees, casting long shadows across nearly 3 miles of winding walking trails, while the scent of freshly cut grass drifted through the cool spring air. Families spread picnic blankets across the open fields. Children chased soccer balls across perfectly trimmed lawns. Dog owners exchanged friendly smiles as golden retrievers splashed through the shallow edge of the lake. It was the kind of Saturday morning that reminded people why they loved living in the city. Hidden among hundreds of ordinary visitors was a man almost no one recognized. Andre Kingston preferred it that way. Dressed in dark jeans, a lightweight navy jacket, and simple white sneakers, he blended effortlessly into the crowd despite leading one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies in the United States. Magazine covers knew his face. Financial news channels analyzed his decisions almost daily. Yet outside the world of technology and business, he discovered that most people never looked twice at a man who intentionally avoided attention. That anonymity had become one of the few luxuries his success could still buy. Walking beside him were 3 members of his development team, each carrying tablets loaded with environmental data architectural sketches, and mapping software. They laughed occasionally as they discussed tree coverage, wireless infrastructure, and accessibility pathways. To anyone passing by, they looked like engineers evaluating a construction site. In many ways, that was exactly what they were doing. For nearly 18 months, Andre had quietly planned something few investors even knew existed. Instead of announcing another billion-dollar acquisition or launching another consumer product, he wanted to build a technology education center that would be completely free for local students. The project would include robotics laboratories, coding classrooms, virtual reality learning spaces, and scholarship programs designed specifically for neighborhoods where opportunities often arrive too late or not at all. He believed talent was everywhere, but opportunity was not. That belief had shaped every major decision of his career. One of the younger engineers pointed toward an empty section near the eastern playground. "That location gives us almost 12 acres to work with," she said. Andre smiled as he studied the surrounding families enjoying the park. "Imagine what this place could become after school every afternoon," he replied. "Children building robots instead of wondering whether they belong in technology." His words carried the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades proving that dreams could survive even when expectations did not. Before anyone answered, Andre noticed a young boy struggling to retrieve a brightly colored kite tangled beneath a wooden bench. Without hesitation, he walked over, knelt beside the child, and carefully untangled the string before handing it back with an encouraging smile. The boy thanked him before sprinting across the field as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Andre watched him disappear into the sunshine, unaware that several people nearby had quietly observed the simple act of kindness. Moments like that mattered more to him than headlines or stock prices ever could. They reminded him why he had started with nothing more than a borrowed laptop, late nights, and a determination that refused to fade. He glanced toward the park entrance as another patrol vehicle slowly rolled through the parking lot, its engine humming softly beneath the peaceful sounds of laughter, birdsong, and children playing, while somewhere beyond the trees, a chain of completely ordinary moments had already begun moving toward an extraordinary collision. Officer Tyler Grayson had started his shift believing it would be another routine Saturday. At 38 years old, he had worn the uniform for more than a decade, and somewhere along the way routine had quietly transformed into certainty. He trusted his instincts more than questions, his assumptions more than conversations. His patrol car rolled slowly through neighborhoods he had driven past hundreds of times, his eyes scanning sidewalks, intersections, and parking lots with practiced efficiency. To many residents, he was simply another officer doing his job. To Tyler, every unusual movement demanded immediate attention. Every unfamiliar face deserved another look. Earlier that morning, his partner had called in sick, leaving Tyler to patrol alone. The radio crackled with ordinary dispatches about traffic complaints, a lost dog, and a minor fender bender across town. Nothing suggested the day would become one of the most scrutinized incidents of his career. Yet pressure had been building for months in ways few people around him fully understood. Department supervisors had repeatedly emphasized proactive policing, encouraging officers to identify suspicious activity before problems escalated. Tyler embraced those expectations with determination, convinced that hesitation created danger while quick decisions created safety. Unfortunately, quick decisions also left little room for understanding. During a brief stop at a neighborhood coffee shop, another officer casually mentioned seeing unfamiliar people gathering equipment at Riverside Park. "Probably another event," the officer shrugged before adding, "still worth keeping an eye on." The comment lasted only a few seconds, but it lingered in Tyler's mind much longer. By the time he returned to his patrol vehicle, curiosity had quietly blended with suspicion. As he drove toward the park entrance, he noticed delivery trucks, maintenance crews, photographers, and families filling nearly every available parking space. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, yet Tyler found himself searching for something that did not fit. Human nature often works that way. Once the mind begins expecting trouble, it starts finding reasons to justify that expectation. His dashboard computer displayed no active alerts connected to the park, no reported thefts, no violent incidents, no wanted suspects. The morning remained peaceful. Even so, Tyler continued driving slowly through the winding access road, carefully observing visitors enjoying the sunshine. Near the eastern section of the park, one group immediately caught his attention. Four adults stood together examining digital maps displayed on tablet computers while occasionally pointing toward different sections of open land. Cases containing electronic equipment rested neatly beside a park bench. One of the men, Andre Kingston, appeared composed and focused as he discussed measurements with the others, occasionally smiling while listening to their ideas. To the engineering team, they were evaluating possibilities for a future education center. To Tyler, viewed from a distance without context, the expensive equipment and unfamiliar gatherings seemed unusual enough to investigate. He parked along the curb and remained inside the patrol vehicle for several moments, quietly observing. Instead of noticing the respectful conversations, the careful planning documents, or the relaxed atmosphere surrounding the group, his attention settled on isolated details that appeared suspicious only because he viewed them through a lens already shaped by expectation. He stepped out of the vehicle, adjusted the camera attached to his uniform, and walked steadily across the grass. Around him, children continued laughing near the playground, cyclists passed along the trail, and ducks drifted peacefully across the pond. The park remained exactly as it had been all morning. Only one thing had changed. Two strangers, each carrying completely different assumptions about the next few minutes, were now walking toward the same conversation, unaware that neither of their lives would ever return to what they had been before. Andre Kingston looked up as the uniformed officer approached with measured steps across the grass. The conversation among the engineers naturally faded, replaced by polite silence. One of them offered a friendly smile, assuming the officer was simply making a routine community check. Andre returned the smile with the same calm confidence that had carried him through boardroom negotiations worth billions of dollars. He believed respect usually invited respect in return. "Good morning, officer," Andre said warmly. "Beautiful day for the park." Tyler Grayson acknowledged the greeting with only a brief nod before letting his eyes travel across the open tablet screens, the survey equipment, and the black carrying cases resting beside the bench. "What exactly is going on here?" he asked in a firm voice. Andre answered without hesitation. "We are evaluating this property for a community education project." One of the engineers opened a digital site plan, preparing to explain further, but Tyler raised his hand before she could speak. "I did not ask you." The young engineer quietly stepped back, exchanging an uneasy glance with her colleagues. Andre remained composed. "We are happy to answer any questions you have." Tyler studied him carefully. Something about Andre's calm demeanor seemed to frustrate him more than reassure him. He had expected nervousness, uncertainty, perhaps even defensiveness. Instead, he found someone who spoke with quiet confidence and maintained steady eye contact without the slightest hint of hostility. Around them, several nearby visitors began paying attention. A father pushing a stroller slowed his pace. Two women walking their dogs paused beside the trail. A teenager sitting beneath a maple tree subtly pointed his phone toward the interaction, more out of curiosity than expectation. Tyler noticed the expensive tablets displaying aerial maps and infrastructure diagrams. "Do you have authorization to conduct commercial activity inside this park?" Andre answered honestly. "We are meeting with city officials later today. Right now, we are simply evaluating the location." Tyler frowned. "So you do not have authorization?" Andre gently corrected him. "Evaluating a public space is different from conducting construction." His tone remained respectful, never dismissive. Even so, the conversation had begun drifting in a direction neither man intended. Tyler folded his arms. "Can I see identification from everyone?" Without complaint, the engineers reached for their wallets. Andre did the same, removing a leather card holder from his jacket pocket. Tyler accepted the identification cards one by one, barely glancing at the names before focusing on Andre's driver's license. His eyes briefly paused on the name, but revealed no recognition. To him, Andre Kingston was simply another unfamiliar citizen standing in a public park with expensive equipment. A light breeze carried laughter from the playground, while ducks glided across the pond behind them. The peaceful surroundings seemed almost disconnected from the growing tension at the center of the field. Andre noticed several people watching and offered Tyler a quiet suggestion. "Officer, if there is a concern, perhaps we can step over to the side so we do not disturb everyone else." Tyler interpreted the request differently. "Why? You do not want witnesses." The words hung in the air longer than either man expected. A few people exchanged uncomfortable looks. Andre blinked once, surprised by the assumption, but answered with the same measured voice. "No, sir. I simply prefer solving misunderstandings without creating unnecessary attention." Tyler's expression remained unchanged. In his mind, every calm answer sounded rehearsed rather than sincere. Every attempt to cooperate seemed carefully calculated instead of genuine. He returned the identification card but kept watching Andre with increasing suspicion, unaware that dozens of security cameras, personal phones, dashboard systems, and even an aerial recreational drone had already begun preserving every word, every gesture, and every decision that would soon become impossible to dispute. The atmosphere shifted so gradually that almost no one recognized the exact moment curiosity became concern. Conversations around the park grew quieter as more visitors slowed their walks, sensing that an ordinary exchange was becoming something far more uncomfortable. Andre Kingston remained exactly where he stood, his hands visible, his posture relaxed, refusing to allow tension to shape his behavior. Years of leading companies through crises had taught him that composure often revealed more about a person's character than any argument ever could. Tyler Grayson, however, interpreted that same composure through an entirely different lens. The absence of fear looked like confidence. Confidence looked like defiance. And defiance, in his mind, demanded greater control. "What is inside those cases?" Tyler asked, pointing toward the equipment neatly arranged beside the bench. One of the engineers answered politely. "Survey equipment, environmental sensors, and mapping devices for our site evaluation." Tyler stepped closer and examined the labels without touching them. Everything appeared professionally organized, each case carrying inventory tags and company identification numbers. Nothing looked hidden or improvised. Even so, his expression remained skeptical. Andre noticed the growing crowd and quietly glanced toward one of his colleagues. Without speaking, the engineer understood the signal and discreetly sent a text message to the company's legal counsel, simply stating that an unexpected police interaction was taking place at Riverside Park. There was no panic in the message, only documentation. That habit had become standard procedure for executives whose schedules often attracted public attention. At nearly the same moment, another silent notification reached a private security coordinator responsible for monitoring Andre's public appearances. Several miles away, the coordinator immediately began reviewing the live location shared by Andre's encrypted safety application. Back at the park, technology continued recording details that no one present fully appreciated. Security cameras mounted near the playground quietly captured the entire conversation from two different angles. A city traffic camera overlooking the nearby entrance recorded every patrol vehicle entering and leaving the parking area. The recreational drone floating peacefully above the lake continued filming wide panoramic footage for a local photography enthusiast who had no idea his weekend hobby was documenting evidence that lawyers would later examine frame by frame. Even Andre's smartwatch continuously logged biometric information, recording heart rate, movement, and precise timestamps as naturally as it counted daily steps. None of those devices cared about opinions. They simply preserved facts. A middle-aged woman standing nearby leaned toward her husband and whispered, "He's been respectful this whole time." Her husband nodded quietly, but said nothing. Another visitor began live streaming from a respectful distance, not to sensationalize the moment, but because recent public conversations had convinced many Americans that documenting encounters protected everyone involved. Andre returned his attention to Tyler. "Officer, if there is any information you would like to verify, I will gladly wait while you contact whoever you need." The offer was genuine. There was no sarcasm hidden beneath his words. Tyler hesitated for only a second before reaching for his shoulder microphone to request additional information through dispatch. As he waited for a response, silence settled across the open field. Birds continued singing from the trees. Children laughed faintly near the splash pad, unaware that adults only a few hundred feet away were watching a conversation balanced on the edge of a decision. Every passing second quietly added another layer to a record that would soon include witness statements, digital files, synchronized timestamps, and countless perspectives. None of it suggested revenge. None of it guaranteed victory. It simply ensured that when the truth finally emerged, it would not depend upon memory alone. Dispatch responded after several long seconds, its calm voice breaking the silence through Tyler Grayson's shoulder radio. "Unit 12, we are not showing any active warrants, outstanding alerts, or reported criminal activity connected to the individuals you identified." Tyler acknowledged the transmission with a brief reply, but instead of easing the tension, the information seemed only to deepen his uncertainty. He looked once more toward Andre Kingston, whose calm expression had not changed since the conversation began. Around them, the growing circle of onlookers remained remarkably quiet. People sensed they were witnessing something important, although no one yet understood why. Andre folded his hands comfortably in front of him and spoke with the same measured tone that had defined every exchange. "Officer, I appreciate that you're doing your job. If there is nothing indicating criminal activity, perhaps we can continue our meeting." Tyler did not answer immediately. Something inside him resisted ending the encounter. He had committed too much attention to the situation to simply walk away. The engineers stood patiently beside their equipment, avoiding sudden movements while quietly exchanging uncertain glances. One of them checked her phone and noticed a message from the company's legal department. Counsel was already on the way. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. She slipped the phone back into her pocket without saying a word. Several blocks away, another vehicle had already entered Riverside Park. Inside sat two members of Andre's executive security team. Unlike traditional bodyguards, they dressed like ordinary professionals, wearing business casual clothing instead of tactical gear. Their instructions were simple. Observe. Record. Avoid escalation unless someone's immediate safety required intervention. They understood Andre's philosophy well. Truth did not need dramatic speeches. It needed accurate records. Back at the park, a light breeze rustled through the maple trees as sunlight reflected across the pond. The ordinary beauty of the morning contrasted sharply with the uncertainty settling over the gathering. A retired school principal watching from a nearby bench quietly remarked to another visitor, "The gentleman has answered every question respectfully." The other woman nodded. "I hope everyone keeps it that way." Tyler slowly walked around the equipment cases again, reading company labels more carefully than before. One carried the logo of Kingston Dynamics, a name that sounded vaguely familiar, although he could not immediately place it. He frowned, trying to remember where he had heard it. Financial news? A billboard? A television interview? The connection remained just beyond reach. Andre noticed Tyler studying the label, but chose not to explain it. Experience had taught him that introducing status during a disagreement often sounded like an attempt to gain special treatment. He believed the law should protect ordinary citizens and successful executives exactly the same way. If respect depended upon wealth or recognition, then it was not really respect at all. Nearby, another family quietly guided their children toward the playground, creating a wider space around the conversation without adding to the tension. Phones continued recording from different angles, not because anyone expected history to be made, but because people increasingly trusted digital evidence more than conflicting memories. At that exact moment, a black sport utility vehicle turned into the parking lot, followed by a silver sedan carrying two attorneys who had left downtown immediately after receiving the unexpected message. Neither Tyler nor most of the crowd noticed the arriving vehicles. They remained focused on the quiet exchange unfolding beneath the trees, unaware that within only a few more minutes, names, facts, and identities hidden beneath ordinary appearances would begin changing the entire direction of the morning. The first person to step out of the black sport utility vehicle wore neither a uniform nor an expensive suit. She carried only a slim leather portfolio and walked with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years solving problems before they became headlines. Her name was Rebecca Lawson, Chief Legal Counsel for Kingston Dynamics. Beside her, two members of Andre Kingston's executive security team remained several steps behind, careful not to interfere. Their purpose was simple: observe everything, escalate nothing. Rebecca approached the gathering slowly until she stood a respectful distance from Officer Tyler Grayson. "Good morning, officer," she said calmly. "My name is Rebecca Lawson. I serve as legal counsel for Mr. Andre Kingston. Is there anything we can help clarify?" Tyler looked from Rebecca to Andre and back again. The introduction caught him slightly off guard, but his expression remained firm. "This is an active investigation," he replied. "We are determining why this group is conducting business inside the park." Rebecca nodded politely. "Understood. We appreciate your professionalism. We simply want to ensure that all facts are available." Without waiting for permission or attempting to interrupt, she opened her portfolio and removed several neatly organized documents. The first was a letter from the city's Department of Parks and Recreation acknowledging a scheduled site evaluation. The second confirmed an afternoon meeting with city planners regarding a proposed educational initiative. The third outlined a multi-million-dollar philanthropic investment intended to create a public technology learning center for local students. Tyler accepted the papers and silently read the first page. Around the gathering, several spectators exchanged puzzled looks as whispers spread through the crowd. "Technology Learning Center?" One man quietly repeated. "That is what they were doing." A young mother standing nearby looked toward Andre with new understanding. He was trying to build something for kids. Andre remained completely silent. He did not point to the documents. He did not explain his accomplishments. He simply allowed the facts to speak for themselves. Rebecca continued in the same respectful tone. "Mr. Kingston prefers that projects like this remain private until local officials have reviewed them. That is why there has not been a public announcement." Tyler reached the final page and noticed a familiar corporate logo at the top. Kingston Dynamics. Suddenly the name connected with memories of financial reports, business magazines, and interviews discussing artificial intelligence, educational, investment, and charitable initiatives across the country. His eyes lifted toward Andre with visible uncertainty. "You are Andre Kingston?" Andre offered a small nod. "Yes, sir." There was no pride in his voice, no satisfaction, only a simple acknowledgement. A long silence settled over the field. Even the people recording with their phones seemed to stop moving for a moment. The realization spread from one person to another almost instantly. Several teenagers recognized the entrepreneur from online interviews they had watched in school entrepreneurship classes. An older man quietly shook his head and whispered, "I read about him donating scholarships last year." Tyler looked once more at the documents in his hands before glancing toward the engineering equipment that had seemed suspicious only minutes earlier. Every case carried matching company identification. Every permit referenced the same project. Every timeline aligned perfectly. The picture that had once appeared uncertain now fit together with uncomfortable clarity. Before anyone spoke again, another vehicle entered the parking lot carrying representatives from the city planning office, completely unaware that they were arriving at a scene where assumptions had already begun giving way to undeniable facts by early evening. The quiet conversation beneath the trees had transformed into one of the most discussed public incidents in the city. The recordings collected from park visitors, security cameras, dashboard systems, and the recreational drone all told the same story from different angles. There was very little disagreement about what had happened because the timeline had been preserved with remarkable precision. News organizations began requesting copies of the public recordings while local reporters gathered outside police headquarters asking whether the department intended to review the encounter. The answer came sooner than many expected. The police chief announced that an internal investigation had been opened and that Officer Tyler Grayson had been placed on administrative leave pending a complete review of the evidence. The statement emphasized that every officer deserved due process while also acknowledging that public confidence depended upon transparency and accountability. Across social media, millions of viewers watched short clips showing Andre Kingston remaining calm throughout the encounter. Comment sections quickly filled with one recurring observation. People were not discussing anger. They were discussing dignity. Many wrote that the most remarkable part of the entire incident was not what Andre had said, but what he had refused to say. He had never insulted the officer. He had never demanded special treatment. He had simply continued cooperating while allowing facts to replace assumptions. The following morning, Kingston Dynamics released a brief public statement confirming that the company remained committed to building the Technology Education Center exactly as planned. The statement also announced that Andre had authorized his legal team to file a civil lawsuit seeking $10 million in damages. The document explained that the purpose of the lawsuit extended beyond financial compensation. According to the filing, the requested relief included expanded bias awareness training, improved review procedures for future encounters, and stronger policies encouraging objective evidence before conclusions were reached. During a press conference held outside the courthouse, one reporter asked Andre whether he wanted revenge against the officer. Andre answered without hesitation, "No, revenge changes one person. Accountability can improve an entire system." The response spread almost as quickly as the original videos. Civic leaders, educators, business owners, and community organizations began discussing the broader lessons revealed by the incident. Several city council members publicly expressed support for the education center, stating that opportunities for young people represented one of the strongest investments any community could make. Meanwhile, investigators continued reviewing every available recording, synchronizing timestamps from dozens of independent devices until the sequence of events could be reconstructed almost minute by minute. Each additional source reinforced the same conclusion, leaving fewer unanswered questions. With every passing day, Tyler spent those days largely out of public view, meeting with department representatives and legal advisors while reflecting on decisions that had unfolded within only a few minutes, yet carried consequences reaching far beyond his own career. What had seemed like an ordinary shift had become a national conversation about judgment, responsibility, and the cost of assumptions. As headlines continued appearing across television screens and front pages throughout the country, one truth became impossible to ignore. The encounter at Riverside Park had never really been about status, wealth, or recognition. It had become a reminder that every decision made under the authority of a badge would eventually be measured against the same standard that protects every citizen equally: the truth. 1 year later, Riverside Park welcomed visitors for a very different reason. Where an empty stretch of grass had once inspired quiet conversations about possibility, a modern glass building now stood filled with light, energy, and hope. The Kingston Innovation Center opened its doors to hundreds of students from neighborhoods across the city, offering free classes in robotics, computer programming, artificial intelligence, engineering, and digital design. Laughter echoed through bright classrooms where young minds explored ideas that only months earlier had seemed impossible. Parents watched proudly as their children assembled small robots, tested software they had written themselves, and imagined futures limited only by their curiosity. Above the entrance, a simple bronze plaque carried a message chosen personally by Andre Kingston. It did not mention his company. It did not mention the lawsuit. It did not mention the encounter that had brought national attention to the project. It simply read, "Opportunity is the strongest form of justice." During the dedication ceremony, city leaders praised the partnership that had transformed a difficult moment into lasting change. Teachers spoke about students discovering confidence they had never known before. Local business owners announced new internship programs for graduates of the center. Reporters covering the event noticed something unusual. Every interview eventually returned to the same idea. The building was not standing because one man had won an argument. It existed because one community had chosen to learn from it. The civil lawsuit concluded several months earlier through a public settlement that included policy reforms, expanded officer training, and the full financial agreement requested by Andre's legal team. True to his word, Andre directed the settlement funds into scholarships, educational technology, and additional learning centers planned for other cities. When asked why he had done so, he smiled gently and answered, "Money solves temporary problems. Education changes generations." Officer Tyler Grayson no longer wore a badge. The investigation had determined that several decisions made during the encounter failed to meet departmental standards, and his employment ended shortly afterward. Over time, he chose to step away from public attention and quietly began speaking with leadership consultants and ethics instructors about the importance of slowing down before making assumptions. Those who met him later often described a man very different from the officer seen in the recordings. Experience had given him something confidence alone never could: humility. On the afternoon of the Innovation Center's opening, Tyler stood across the street for a brief moment, unnoticed by almost everyone. He watched families entering the building, children carrying laptops almost as proudly as trophies, and volunteers welcoming every visitor with genuine smiles. He never crossed the street. He simply looked at the place where one decision had changed countless lives, lowered his head thoughtfully, and walked away without saying a word. Inside the lobby, a young student approached Andre after finishing her first robotics workshop. She looked up with wide eyes and asked, "Mr. Kingston, how did you know this place would matter?" Andre smiled, glanced around the room filled with hopeful faces, and answered softly, "Because every child deserves to be seen before they are judged." The little girl nodded, holding her new robotics certificate against her chest as though it were the most valuable thing she had ever owned. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, filling the building with a warm glow that seemed to erase the memory of the misunderstanding that had begun everything. Some people believe justice arrives with loud victories and dramatic endings. But the strongest kind of justice often arrives quietly, opening doors that fear once tried to keep closed. After all, a badge may represent authority for a season. Please like, the character leaves a legacy to the channel to hear more stories of justice.